Okay, that should be recording now. So thank you guys for joining us today. We certainly will make this available for the others to review at a later date, and more importantly, should be a resource that you can quickly check over if there's any points that need to be expanded on.
Yep.
Certainly, the way I see this moving forward is your participation is really important, and by answering questions along the way, I'm sure it will be well worthwhile to the learning experience. So, without further ado, what the basic format that we were hoping to go through was we'd give a little more of our experience, which may and we'll be giving you a copy of this presentation, so there might be some slides that you can certainly use in generating interest within your potential clients. And that's why we thought we'd go through a little bit of our experience. What I thought would be worthwhile is also just giving you a bit of an overview of a lubricant manufacturer. So again, you can start to see the manufacturing processes and where the issues may arise. The next point, we'll go deep dive into case studies.
Yep.
And with that, I would hope it would start to give you an idea of further questions that you might be asking potential clients. The major, and you'll see that some of the manufacturing case studies that we've got are actually very relevant to the lubricant manufacturer. So I hope you'll be able to see that relevance. And that's if you don't, I'd love that's a perfect time to be asking questions.
Okay.
Now, this is just a general capability to deliver slide. So it talks about our proven record with multinationals. What is the immediate value that they can expect from an improvement engagement with us? Why we are seen as industry experts, and more importantly, and for the future of any relationship, how are we innovating and continue to innovate? So look, with that, I'd leave that for you guys to review and take in as required. But that can very much be something that may be included in a email if you're starting to get some interest from a potential client.
Yeah.
Again, I think you guys would have seen this. That's certainly our slide with going through our market segments and current clients. With that, this is a general lubricant manufacture process. Again, there are variations on this, but very much there's generally there will be bulk oil tanks, which will feed into a blending process. With oil, generally what happens is that there will be additives for particular reasons, whether to make it marine grade, unless affected by water, or high performance racing cars down to higher levels of friction and viscosity required for trucks, and all varying applications. So basically, they'll take the base oil grade, and then they will put in additives. The raw materials outside of that, and that's fairly simple. And then there's the packaging choices, and that takes various filling machines. And then we go down into, particularly for consumer products, we then have packaging lines. And where that will come into is if it's a 4 or 5 litre pack or a 1 litre pack, generally, that will be put into a shipper or a cardboard box. So there's probably, with a 4 litre container, you've got, they may be printed cans, or they may be, there may be a labeler in the line. All that is dependent upon the way the manufacturing set up. But the main point is that we've got the raw material tanks feeding into blending, and then we pack off. So with regards to the constraints in the blending area, what is really important is to minimize your cleanup. So what we find, the most efficient way of scheduling or planning that resource is to go from a high specification product right down to perhaps a more general use product. And what that allows is the fact that you, and if it's polymers and paint, you go from a light color down to a dark color. So again, you're not having to clean out the vessel out after you've finished a blend. You can actually just do the following. And rather than cleaning the tank 30 times through the month, we actually reduce that down to one big clean at the end of the month.
Okay.
So that's what we mean by campaigning.
I see. So you sequence, you plan your blending from, how should I say this, lower quality, higher quality to lower quality kind of things, right?
Exactly.
So exactly. Yeah, because instead of having to clean, if you just blend them randomly, you have to clean after each every blend. But if you sequence them properly, then you just have to do one off cleaning at the end of the month.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure it would be valid for all lubricant manufacturers. For instance, you certainly see some level of tinting in various brands of lubricants.
Yes.
Such as, you know, the one that jumps to mind for me is Royal Purple from the US. That's their marketing ploy. As far as it actually changing the quality of the oil, I don't believe it does. But it gives them brand recognition at that level. But you're with any of the campaigning, and if you're making even polymerizing, again, you go from really high spec resins down to low quality resins, where the spec is very wide.
Yes.
But that's that will be done in the all those types of considerations for this part will be done in the cracking, in the petroleum refining. So when we get down to filling, it comes down to packaging size and sequencing. So we may want to sequence various packaging lines based around not changing the size. So if we can, we want to fill out as many 4 litres or 200 litre drums as we can in a row.
Yes.
So there we automatically may have generally what we'll find is the major constraint is the blend. The packaging lines will be set up to give them some degree of flexibility, as in you may be able to set up a packing line for a 4 litre and deliver material from four different blending tanks. So that would give us real flexibility to just try and keep one filling line just on 4 litres. And what that allows us to do is we don't have to change that packaging line to a 20 to accommodate a 5 litre or a 1 litre, and that can change a lot, save a lot of change over time. Where and all it means is that there's a label change. So changing the size may take 4 hours. Changing the label might take 5 minutes. So again, we really basically the filling will be set up, but there is certainly capability to sequence along that packaging line to make sure that we don't we minimise production setups. Now, there's a couple of case studies we'll go on to, and tobacco is very similar, and so is dairy. Tobacco, seeing it's a leaf product, doesn't sound so similar, but generally when the tobacco is mixed for a particular grade, that is done in a bulk container, whether it be a 10-ton batch or whatever. But it's done in a big batch, there's blending, and then it goes out to a packing line. Well, it goes to a high speed and a packing line. So again, in this, the actual cigarette maker is like the filling operation. With dairy, again, you've got the bulk tanks where you've got the milk, and where the milk might be processed. For instance, whether it's low fat or normal fat milk, or whether it's flavoured milk. So again, having that tank visibility, particularly in those areas of before and after around blending, is really important. And it is quite often, and it's very well. It's the same issues between all three manufacturing types: a lubricant, a tobacco, and a dairy manufacturer. So, is that starting to give you a feel for how, with regards to how those processes are similar?
Sorry, can you repeat a bit on the packaging, the lubricant manufacturing packaging size? What do you mean by like sequence sizes together to reduce changeovers? I didn't quite get it.
Okay, so on the filling side? Yeah, look, they could fill out to in some instances, they may fill out to a 30,000 litre truck. In some, it may be a 1,000 litre IBC. Or it could be a 200 litre drum, or a 10 litre, or a 5 litre pail, a 20 litre pail, 4 litre, down to a 1 litre bottle. How you make, basically that is subservient to the blend, or what blends are available. And it's very dependent upon how they've set up their filling lines and the flexibility within the filling. A classic example for what I'm talking about is if you connect all of blends to well, if one blending tank may be connected to one filling line. So there we have to basically fill out as much as what we can of that blend.
Yes, yes.
And there we're going to have pack size changes when we're filling.
Okay.
The first thing is we need to make sure that if we've made 2,600 litres of a blend, we actually plan to fill out 2,600 litres. We don't want to leave like 205 litres of material in the bottom if we haven't packed out. And if we don't have the right visibility on demand, we may end up a 200 litre drum short, and we just ran the batch out on 201 1 litre bottles, which is now 3 months worth of stock.
Yes, yes.
So there's that master production scheduling issue that we need to get right. The other thing is that if we do need to do changeovers in the
hello?
Yeah.
What happened?
Battery off. Hello, sorry, Rob. The speaker just went off. Hang on.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Yeah, sorry. We lost you at what was it? 1 minute ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
with the
visibility, visibility of it's very important so that we can plan the filling and the product sizes well. We do not want to leave any another 3 months worth of stock laying around.
Yeah, great. So that's a master production scheduling.
It happens again. Sorry. Can we use the internet?
Okay.
Hello?
Yep, I can hear you well.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. Yeah.
So look, that's a master production scheduling.
Oh my God.
And that's
It's a laptop.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rob. It happens again.
yeah. That's okay.
This is the most I can go. Hello?
Yep, I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
This is the highest.
Sorry, 5 minutes. Why is it not connecting to? Shop.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a shop. Oh, sorry. Hello?
Hi.
Yes, much better. Okay.
Great.
All right.
All right, I'll remove the chat.
Remove the chat.
So where we were was, that's a master production scheduling issue.
Yes.
Which is making sure your demand by pack or SKU is being met by as effectively as possible from the blend. Then on the filling line, what we want to do is minimize any changeovers there. And that can be changeovers to different brands, quite often there will be one bill of material from the blend that could service 4 different brands. So again, we want to sequence, it may be better to sequence the 5 litres on one line and just do the label changes as required. Or we may need to sequence according to the changeovers, or to minimise changeovers based on the pack size.
Yep.
So again, like I say, the way we still need to on every factory is different.
Yes.
And how those constraints play out can be will be different depending upon the level of automation. And as I said, a blend may be able to be put down 5 different lines, or it may only be able to be put down 1 packaging line. But whatever the constraints, we can model them and make sure that they're doing the most efficient.
Agree.
So with the list of lubricant manufacturers, I would suggest that perhaps there are some, they're all doing these 2 processes. There may be differences between those. For instance, at the more advanced, they might actually do blending in a continuous flow, where it's added through the pipe as it's being pumped to the filler. But nevertheless, the constraints of just the raw materials, the additives, the packaging, all need to be considered in the scheduling process. And particularly with the tank management, making sure we don't get gridlocks there. So look, does that give you a bit of a feel for the manufacturing process? Are you comfortable with that?
Yes. So far so good.
So where I thought we'd go is identifying a client's needs. And this is at a very high level. But through experience, what we find, it's easy to open a business conversation at the higher level as to if they want to improve a KPI, like delivery performance or OEE, or reduce working capital, such as inventory, then we're right into the conversation. Otherwise, the questions you can be asking around is the process. So with regards to demand management, are your customers giving you forecasts? Are you utilising those forecasts in your planning process? How are you, or are you using spreadsheets in your demand management? But generally, if they want to improve that, or if they only schedule and they don't master production schedule and they want to do that, well, there again, we're straight into it. If they're sort of saying, oh no, our planning's okay, then we can go down and ask whether they're using spreadsheets. As soon as they're using spreadsheets, we know that there's an opportunity for improvement.
Yes.
We know we're going to save their planners heaps of time, and more importantly, they will have better visibility through our software tools to manage their competing resources accordingly. Now, one of the so with regards to that, does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was Putri, it was great to see the list of lubricant manufacturers in Malaysia, and and yeah, this going through this during your building of the relationship with each of the customers, quickly a pretty good way to identify whether there's a requirement.
I see, because usually, from my understanding, is that they would already have a focus or targeted area of improvement for their supply chain management in place, right? For the year, for example. So that's what we are trying to find out.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's and quite often there's there may be improvements going on. It's once we understand if we know that they're using spreadsheets,
Yeah.
we know we can speed the process of the planning process. That's just a given. There may be other improvement projects that they're working on that at this stage supply chain or supply chain software may not be seen as an enabler. And that's when we're going to have to talk to them exactly about what's going on. And, you know, quite often it may be that they have got priorities for the next 2 months. But if you know that they're using spreadsheets in planning and they haven't got any plans to replace them, we know that there's that opportunity, even if it's in a few months' time.
Yep.
So it's really about identifying who's got the need and who's not solving it at the moment. Then we can, once we get there, then our sales process goes into elevating the solution we can provide and what other solutions, what other issues it may solve as a result. Because invariably what we find, if we start, when we do a supply chain improvement and put in, let's say, Prophit e-planner to schedule a plant, quite often there's a lot less noise and people start to trust the plan more. So variation from plans actually decrease. And it's that noise within a manufacturing environment where it gets hard to really see where the issue is. And we've had, and I'll take you through an example where by putting in scheduling, it actually enabled the company to properly put in SMED type improvement activities, which is all about reducing the changeovers. Now, without the stability of the scheduling software and the predictability of the schedule that it gave the business, their operational people would be still too busy fighting fires on a day-to-day basis than to focus on reducing the changeover times. So, like I say, I mean, this, all I really want this is again, just very, these are very high level where we can really identify where there are opportunities. Then we can work through the politics of how we get our solution on the company's radar.
Yes.
I wasn't sure, but has Tim managed to take you through this slide?
No.
Okay. Well, these are basically client impact statements. And they are from clients where they have implemented our software, maybe different solutions. However, some of these generally resound across all of our improvement projects. For instance, we spend time focusing on what opportunities are next as in planning, no longer worrying about now reacting. And I'm sure you would have seen the our supply chain maturity triangle.
Yes, yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the triangle, yeah.
So that's where, you know, after we've done an improvement project, our clients have actually echoed exactly what that's all about. And we really do see the maturity triangle being, or hierarchy being really important. And when we take clients through that, invariably, they will self-identify where they're at in their planning maturity. So I always, I'm keen that you keep that as a in your armory when you're talking to clients. To be honest, with that type of model, that can be used, and you can sketch it out yourself and take someone through it, even in an impromptu meeting. So that's always something to just keep in the back of your minds. It is rare for people to challenge the e-planner schedule. Unlike spreadsheet, it is easy to show why it is the best schedule. That was from a client where we'd reduced 60 hours of planning down to 10 hours a week. And this is really important. And when I talk about the noise, you want your operations and supply chain working together. And quite often, ops will challenge a schedule. And as soon as they stop challenging the schedule and try and execute it as best they can, it's amazing how the team gels and moves into one direction, and you start to get those 1-2% improvements. But this is really interesting that when someone shows you a spreadsheet, there's invariably it'll take you half an hour to really understand what it's about. And this is where what ePlanner has really done has created that gel between ops and supply chain departments. Another one has been Profit support is fantastic, better than our internal IT. Between you guys, that's often echoed throughout our client at Visi. And that's the way we support our clients. So basically, we'll want to make sure that we've got back to them within, at the latest, within half an hour to say we're working on the issue.
48 hours.
Sorry?
How many hours?
Half an hour.
Half an hour.
Yeah,
wow.
30 minutes. Generally, we're back within a minute.
Wow.
But we've found this as it gets away from that internal ticketing, where a user uses an internal ticket and puts it, and it goes in. They complain about it going into the Ethernet, and they never know whether it's being worked on.
Yeah.
Our clients have always got the support where they know someone's picked it up.
Yes.
Now being looked at. And it's probably fair to say that one of the things, particularly with Visi, even if it was a master data issue, we've now solved the issue within half an hour. And now they can know they've got to follow their internal IT to get the issue resolved. But just having that little bit of clarity, rather than having to wait half a day for an answer, it's amazing how it ensures that Profit users are our biggest advocates.
Okay. All right.
Strategic impact, other ones. Profit systems moved us from theoretical to practical. A plant level Profit E-planner was implemented in 8 weeks. We reduced our supply chain team from 21 to 10. Stock turns were increased by 300% and raw material stocks reduced by 63 million. Invariably, what we've always talked about is that we work fast. We don't expect projects to go for longer than 3 months. To us, that's not enabling the business. Within 3 months, the business will actually want to have more than likely have a focus somewhere else. And that may mean that our solution needs to be refined or adjusted, but there are only small tweaks to keep that continued improvement happening.
Yeah.
You know, invariably, the time in planning we reduce is about 50%. Now, with most people in Australia, most clients don't look to reduce their headcount, but what it allows them to do is get the time that's saved working on continuous improvement. And when the solution allows like 2,000 man hours to be liberated from planning activities into now continuous improvement, the opportunity cost available is huge. Again, what the next one, we specified S&OP functionality to be included into E-planner over Christmas. Within 4 weeks, S&OP functionality was in place and functioning. Compare that to QAD, where it took 7 months to get a demo. Again, we're supply chain experts, and that's why what happens, I'm not sure what it's like in Malaysia, the Malaysian market, but certainly in Australia, E&P companies will promise more than what they can ever deliver.
Yes.
And they may be able to have an expert in the US or Germany that may be able to do it. We're not talking anything about the price yet, but may be able to do it. And then they just don't have the skills on the ground.
Yes.
To actually implement it.
So like when customer, for example, when we tell them this, right? So they will ask, so what makes it possible for you to do this in 4 weeks? So you got an expert, which is on the ground.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. And also we are comparatively smaller and a bit more agile than the big companies like QAD.
Absolutely. That's a major advantage.
Yep.
We now have a dynamic demand management system, which easily and quickly provides us with the right information at the right time and in the right format to run our planning processes throughout the month. This was actually from a client who wanted to put in, they actually spent $1 million with, and I haven't heard from it for a while. It was the, it was more a budgeting tool, and they were trying to use that for demand management. And again, the business quickly could never get it to work, and promptly threw it out. And that's where, for a fraction of the cost, we were able to put in a demand management system. And more importantly, what the demand management system allowed them was to reduce, seeing the business could actually believe in the forecast that was being generated by the supply chain department. they actually started using that for budgeting purposes.
Budgeting purposes.
Yeah. And more importantly, we could do, with our demand management tool, we could actually enable them to do scenarios. For instance, what happens if we pick up that business in March rather than June? Or what normally happens more often is, what does it mean to our business if we don't pick it up, if we pick it up in June rather than March?
Mm-hmm.
How much profit haven't we generated in that second quarter?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, sorry, that was. Have you guys heard of Hyperion?
Hyperion?
Yeah.
Actually, no. Is it a company?
Yeah. It was. It was a business planning tool.
Hyperion. Hyperion.
Hyperion.
Hyperion. It's okay. I'll look it up afterwards. Oh yeah, it's a software company acquired by Oracle.
Yeah, that's what I thought had been acquired.
So they used this one before.
Yeah, well, they never actually got to use it, but they spent a lot of money trying to put it in.
I see.
And again, whenever I'm talking to clients, I respectfully remind them that, you know, whatever, there's two major things that you need to consider when buying software. And that is, does the software meet your requirements? And two, do the implementers understand your business? Seeing we've ticked both those boxes, that's where we really get this sort of feedback from our clients.
Yeah, big corporations like Hyperion, they are good in software, IT side of things, but they are not in the business. So,
well, exactly. Or they put people, graduates trying to implement business software, and that unfortunately that doesn't necessarily work.
Yes.
And this is the really important thing about supply chain is understanding the business processes.
True.
Is the most important thing, and then it's just speeding those processes and increasing the visibility, and that makes it much easier to run your supply chain.
Agree. Because from my point of view, supply chain is a really complex. Different manufacturer have different processes. So if you cannot become business process experts in just one day and try to sell your software.
Yeah.
Right. So, but Prophit system, like team, you do have that kind of know-how.
Yep.
Yep. Sure.
This case study is probably the furthest away from the lubricant market. However, there are some really important things here. So this was a steel can manufacturer. And I'm not sure, look, I think there might be packaging companies within Malaysia. And certainly, when you're talking to lubricants or lubricant manufacturers, which is probably close to your vertical, they will just even asking them who supplies their packaging is a quick way to start extending leads. So look, this business was the bottom line. We were able to, for $150 million business, we were able to reduce inventory by 25 million. Now, that's a lot of money that you can put into your pocket to not run your business. More importantly, what improvement can 25 million fund? So there, the opportunity that reduction in inventory presents is huge.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're only turning over 150 million. A really important point with regards to what we did was they knew they needed to improve their planning processes, but they didn't necessarily know how. And this is where we went in and did our supply chain opportunity assessment.
Yes.
So I think you're well aware of what we're able to do there.
Yeah, discovery stage.
Yeah. Now, in this particular case, the GM was able to build an ROI on process recommendations and system support that would deliver a saving in inventory of 10.5 million. So he was able to sell the business and say, look, if I give you 10.5 million, you give me the cash to pay profit, I can deliver an ROI in less than 12 months.
Yeah.
So I've got
May I know how much this one costed them? I mean,
sorry?
may I know how much you charge them on this one? Just to get an idea on the...
Yeah, look, this can manufacturer is quite complex. To be honest, it was about, it wasn't far off $500,000 Australian dollars. Now, that's where they got approval. There were other savings involved, and particularly in OEE. The more they reduce changeovers, because, these are very high-speed machines, and the higher speed the machine, the more it costs you when it's not on.
So again, the higher speed machine?
A high-speed machine, basically, the more it costs you when it's down.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep, great. So they are high-speed machines, and it was through OEE that we knew we could get significant savings as well. So look, we integrated with SAP. What we did, if there was a real win, there were 4 layers of manual data entry through the planning processes with the spreadsheets.
I see.
So whether that's cutting and pasting, whether that's that was a lot of time was just manual data entry, and then you've got the issue that the spreadsheets then you don't have the greatest visibility, no matter whether I guess the take-home message here is, even with automated data to spreadsheets, we've reduced the planning time, and we're talking 1.5 people running spreadsheets every week, from that 60 hours down to 10 to 20 hours of manual time. That's even when they're automatically updating their spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So it is not just the integration. A lot of people with SAP HANA are sitting there saying, "Oh, but we'll be able to get reports really quickly." But that's great. Well, no, in the planning software, there's a lot more than just real-time data.
Yeah.
There's a lot of calculations to go through to manage the constraints and produce an effective schedule. an optimized schedule. So with regards to that, these guys were able to reduce their over deliver on what the GM had promised. They were able to reduce their inventory not just by 10 million, but by 25 million.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, we'd never worried when we over deliver.
Yes, exactly.
It's the right place to be.
Yeah, under promise, over deliver.
Yeah. But what I wanted to point out was the fact that, without over-promising, we were able to get the job approved, the CapEx approved,
Yes.
and we were able to over-deliver on the business benefits. Because, again, what we did was replace all planning spreadsheets. So, again, from a corporate governance point of view, spreadsheets aren't the best. More importantly, the planning team or time was reduced by 75%. The team wasn't, because again, they needed to put those resources elsewhere. One of the major things with this, and this is where we've talked about supply chain being a competitive advantage.
Yes.
These guys were consistently, and they in the steel can market, you can't afford to miss a delivery. And one of the things is one of the techniques they employ, which is all fine with Prophit, is vendor managed inventory. So they're able to manage that through Prophit to make sure that their clients have always got stock on hand. But when you're dealing with that can lead to a lot of inventory. And more importantly, they had control over their manufacturing where they could meet the delivery requirements and yet reduce their inventory. Most people in manufacturing think if you want to improve your delivery performance, you've actually got to increase your inventory.
Yeah.
And that is something that we continually dispel.
Yes, yes. Proper planning is much more efficient. You don't need to increase the inventory.
Yep.
If you got a proper planning, yeah.
Nothing like reducing guesswork. One of the things that we've also talked about is that the supply chain should be a competitive advantage. Now, this steel can manufacturer has been with us for a number of years, and it was about in 2012 that there seemed to be a lot of natural disasters. And that's Queensland floods, there was the Japanese tsunami, and the Christchurch earthquake. That is a lot of disruption to any supply chain. I'll take a step back and explain why it's really important to the steel can manufacturer. And this is really relevant because there could be raw materials imported for manufacturers in Malaysia from all around the world. So since 2009, nobody was manufacturing tin plate in Australia. Actually, I think it was 2008. It was 2008. So these guys import from 6 different suppliers around the world for their tin plate, which is pretty much 60%, well, it's about 50% of their cost of manufacture. So they're importing steel plate from Germany, from Japan, from China, and from Vietnam. And the best price, best cost is out of Germany. But that's a 6-month lead time. Because in ordering grades out of the German steel mills, they had a 3-month manufacturing campaign. So they would start with one grade and go through 3 months of manufacturing their grades of steel. So that's where it was, although it's the best price, best quality, that's just too much risk. And that's why they've got other suppliers from various parts of Asia.
Yeah.
During the Queensland floods and the Japanese tsunami, you couldn't get supply out of Japan. And so that totally disrupted their supply of raw materials.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is not only were they able to manage their raw material supply during those periods, they were able to meet all their requirements. And it was, in fact, that they actually ended up selling what material they could to their major opposition in Australia.
Yeah.
Needless to say, it was about within the next 24 months, they increased their market share by 30%.
Wow.
So you can see that there had been some disruptions in the marketplace, which this client had been able to navigate, where their supply chain was a competitive advantage that led to increased market share.
Mm.
And I understand you guys get it, but that's the importance of the supply chain and a robust supply chain.
Yeah.
So look, with that one, I'll move on to a tobacco manufacturer. Now, with regards to, we're able to reduce their cost by 1.5 million per annum. This was interesting in the sense that it's British American Tobacco who no longer manufacture in Australia.
Mm.
But this was back in 2008, 2009, where basically there'd been Rothmans had been rolled into British American Tobacco. And they'd just closed their New Zealand operations, and that all got consolidated here into Sydney.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, the Australian factory was manufacturing a huge amount of SKUs at globally relatively small volumes, because they were supplying all of Oceania, as well as two major companies' SKUs. So for production efficiency, that when you globally benchmark, it looks bad, because again, in the US, they would have one factory making not just one brand, but one pack size of one brand, and that's all it would do. So changeovers and sequencing and those types of things are not an issue at all. All you've got is machine reliability. But here in Australia, you've constantly had the issue that while we're a mature market, we've got, which means we've got lots of SKUs, we've actually got relatively small volumes.
Mm-hmm.
And now when you multiply that with New Zealand and Fiji, Vanuatu, all these other small markets, you can imagine what pressure this factory was under.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, as global head offices tend to do, they don't worry about that level of detail. They just say, well, look, we want you to reduce your manufacturing costs by 30 million, and don't care how you do it, but otherwise we'll be making it in Singapore. So that's where these guys, we got involved with them on an operational improvement, and that was to put continuous improvement on the shop floor. Outside of that, they knew they needed to get their scheduling under control.
Mm-hmm.
And to put in SAP APO was going to cost them 4 million. So there's no way they could go with a global IT solution, because it was, they're trying to save 30 million, and
Yeah. Not a good idea.
Exactly. So that's where they turn to us, and that's where we put in our Prophit e-planner.
Mm-hmm.
one of the things, and again, when we talk about agility, and it's an operational engineering thing, basically they were changing. One of the improvement projects was Project Gecko, and that was where all the high-speed cigarette manufacturing machines, the filters were being fed by guys with buckets of just filling up hoppers at will, and just, you know, a siren would go up, they'd grab the right filters, put it in the hopper for the machine, keep it going. That's a lot of labour. So they were replacing that with taking, with automatically piping the filters to the hopper at various machines. That was going live about probably 6 weeks after we started the project of implementing Prophit e-Planner. And when we were advised of this at the start of the project, we were told by the engineering department, oh no, it won't change any constraints. Of course, the supply chain department and ourselves had a good laugh about that because we knew it would. But the point is, they didn't stop the project because they understood that we had the software and the capability to have that major project scope change in the middle of it, and would be able to subsequently manage the constraints, which in a way that meant the right thing for the business.
Yep.
So again, that really underlines our agility of what we can provide. And it always reminds us when people are in times of fast change, it's always helpful to remind people that we're very light on resources, whether it be IT or supply chain. And if they're comparing us to an ERP implementation, they are like chalk and cheese. We're miles away from that.
Yeah.
But again, when we get through to it, what we really enabled was those guys to be able to plan the operations with 2 people, and it was really just one. Basically, they wanted 2 people there, so if one of the planners took leave, they had a person who was familiar with the system and could run it. So that was from a corporate security risk point of view that they ran that. The third person was then able to move on and focus more on higher value-added planning, which was in master production scheduling and the like. What we were certainly able to deliver was an improvement of 6% OEE. Now, these guys, you know, British American Tobacco only employs the brightest and best of graduates. This is a classic example where even the brightest of people with a spreadsheet can't do as much as an automated planning system. And when we can deliver an improved 6% OEE, where it really hits the ground is that these guys may still be able to run the spreadsheet, crash a schedule because of some unforeseen reason, whether it's a supply issue or packaging issue, but it's being able to resequence everything after that. With an automated e-planner, within half an hour of finding that a delivery didn't come through that you needed to manufacture that product, not only can you see the consequences to your delivery performance, you can reschedule the plan, and more importantly, optimize the schedule after you've made those changes. So you know that in the next couple of weeks, while we've made that change to the schedule, we haven't, what we call, kick the can down the road and make issues for someone else. or a job later on.
Yeah.
So I hope that sort of underlines, again, our flexibility in how we deliver. More importantly, how we deliver, what value we can deliver above and beyond spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And more importantly, what value we can do above an ERP vendor. I understand you guys sell ERP, so I don't mean to bash it so hard, but in supply chain, all I'm really trying to say is that this is an area where it is a niche, and there is significant value to be generated by using a best-of-breed system.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of track record really, it proves how good Prophit system is. Yeah.
Great. Again, one of the things, happy for what I'm hoping by taking you through these is that you'll be able to sort of sit there and understand that, okay, well, if they're going for APO, SAP APO, it's a good time to be saying, well, look, is that really the right thing for your business? That's a perfect opportunity. How about?
Yeah, we do have some potential client that told us that, oh, we just implemented this, module for procurement and all. For supply chain management. So it's kind of good to throw them the question again. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I'll move over towards a dairy manufacturer, and again, like I say, although it's food versus oils, a lot of people who aren't in manufacturing wouldn't see the similarities.
Yeah.
But basically, they're a very similar setup, and I hope I've got another document which can sort of on a dairy manufacturer, and it may give you a bit more of a feel on that. We'll touch on that later. But look, one of the things, and again, we had this where Oracle was sitting there in the US saying, "Yeah, we can manage tanks. We can manage tanks." The point was that they had 12 months to do the Oracle implementation. It got to 2 months out of go live date. And the business lost faith in Oracle, and they said, look, we've evaluated Prophit. You guys can't do it. We're going with these guys. The unfortunate thing for us was we now had to implement in 2 months. So we were sort of sitting there saying, you could have made this decision 4 months ago, but needless to say, we got in there and we got it solved. With regards to a major point of outside of this, we reduced the planning time by 75%, which was certainly appreciated by the planning department. One of the things, and I do have to go back and quantify this, and I know there's been some changes where I can probably ask a couple of people what the value was. But our understanding, they were manufacturing yogurts, which have got a very short shelf life. And what was happening when they were planning in spreadsheets was they were actually dumping a lot of material that was dropping out of shelf life. And again, one of the products that they were manufacturing was soft serve, the soft serve ice cream from McDonald's. And McDonald's actually had a shorter shelf life than what they would sell in the supermarkets and other clients. And it was that varying shelf life which made it really difficult to see the visibility from a planning perspective. Our understanding, the amount of write-offs because of overdue shelf lives we believe it's in hundreds of thousands of dollars. So again, that paid for the project just in reducing the waste. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that a new MD went in after we put in ePlanner, had been in there for 12 months, the MD was able to go in and really make sure there was two things he wanted to do, was to reduce changeovers and reduce water. Now, cleanups, more changeovers mean more cleanups and more water usage. Now, again, if you don't have a stable schedule, if you're constantly changing because of unforeseen events, there's your operations actually have less time to work on those continuous improvement areas. Now, particularly water usage is a hot topic in Australia, and dumping of water, wastewater is a high cost, and labour is a high cost. So that's where reducing changeover times and water usage, being able to do that with a stable schedule is possible. If the stable isn't schedule, I would challenge the effectiveness of those types of programs. It's not to say that they won't get some results, but I'd still sit there and say it's the momentum accumulation effect. When you've minimised the number of changeovers, you've actually got more time in the resource who has to improve, and therefore they can actually, rather than getting 30% of the improvement, they've actually got time to get 100%. So it's getting supply chain under control can really help enable businesses, and it goes back to that fact of does your client want a supply chain that will give them a competitive advantage? Manufacturing is a tough environment, and there's a lot that can go wrong. So this is one of the things. Even in the most competitive markets, having an effective supply chain, whether it's increasing your delivery performance or whether it's just reducing cost of goods sold, can certainly create that competitive advantage. And I hope you've seen from some of those case studies that we are talking about putting 1s and 2% onto the bottom line, which for most manufacturing in Australia is lucky to have a operating profit of 5%. That's outside of alcohol and tobacco and defence and aeronautics.
Operating cost of 5%.
That's final. No, sorry. Thank you for clarifying. A net operating profit.
Oh, okay.
5%. You know, a good business, you obviously want to aim at 10% plus. But yeah, a lot of manufacturers in Australia are lucky to be getting 5% net operating profit, and that's where we're sort of saying, when you reduce 25 million out of a $150 million business, that's a lot. That creates a lot of breathing room for that business.
True.
So this is a dairy tank manufacturer, and let me know if I'm starting to get into a little more detail. But we wanted to just highlight with you the visualization available within our software that makes it so much easier to manage things like tanks. And we see that tanks will be important within the lubricant market. But so on this area, you can start to see where you're filling, you might be mixing, and then when you're starting to draw down. And again, this tank will be in the blending area, and that's all feeding off into the filling and packing area. Sorry. So again, in this particular screen, what we can see is you can actually see the full flow of one job all the way through from raw materials through to a palletized finished good. So whether that pallet is 4 drums or 721 litres, you've got the visibility all the way through. And quite often what happens with tanks, as they are piped up, and that's where the constraints come, you don't want to be double booking tanks.
Yes.
And while a classic within dairy is that you don't want to be putting low fat milk into a tank that has just had full cream milk. Full cream in it. Because again, it changes the spec. So so whatever the variation is in the oil storage, they're the types of decisions and gridlocks that you're trying to avoid. And it's this level of visibility that really makes it simple to manage. So here I've got sort of trying to give you a feel for where with dairy versus lubricants. Again, you're getting the bulk milk. You'll have various types. You can have skim milk concentrate, powder, or cream. And they will go through a particular process of batching through the pasteurizer, then to fill outs, and we'll go through to the various sizes. Do you get the feel of how close the two manufacturing types are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, almost similar. It's all about blending and yeah.
Excellent. All right. So look, that's really what I've prepared for today. What I want to ask is, do you have any questions? One, be frank, was it helpful?
Yes, very much helpful, because we are really planning to go aggressively on marketing this to the industry. Of course, we will start with lubricants manufacturer, and I appreciate that you come out with very good focus on the case study in manufacturing. It's in lubricant manufacturing, but also we are looking towards outside of oil and gas to the general industry as well. For example, like Putri focusing on the oil and gas, but we have Adibah here who is focusing on building the clientele for non-oil and gas general industry, like Hartalega, Top Glove, which are like the biggest glove manufacturer in Malaysia. So, and in the world. So we are going towards that as well. And just now you have given us some various case study in various industry that was very useful. Yep.
Rob, I have a question.
Yep.
Is there like an industry that you think you cannot enter? That you think this product is not suitable? This profit system is not suitable for. Is there a particular industry that we should like avoid?
Yeah, it's a good question, and my answer is no. Where we Tim has an extraordinary experience across all types of manufacturing. And he's built the tools to be able to have the flexibility to meet a wide range of manufacturing environments. If we've got our strength has been in the packaging industry, but again, we know we're very excuse me, we're very underutilized in assembly operations.
Mm.
And to be honest, I think that is due to the fact that Australia has got very few assembly operations. So Tim's background, you know, he's worked for a computer assembly company. He's worked for a robotics company. He has worked for Australian Defence Industries. And many packaging industries, or packaging companies. Our success in packaging has allowed us to gain the reputation that has allowed us to move into FMCG or CPG companies.
Yeah.
And that continues to happen. Look, so that is why, that's basically why I say no, is we haven't seen a manufacturing process that can't be modelled.
Okay.
Again, with some of the more complex, one of the projects, and it comes back to the dairy industry, from everything we're seeing, this is becoming more and more important. We're working with a client to improve the predictability of the seasonal variation of milk. Now, we know how we're going to configure the user interface so that can be visually managed by the planner. Where we're working with Macquarie Uni is on what are the important factors and how are they statistically relevant. So you won't get this so much in a tropical environment, but in a temperate environment, you have a massive difference between summer and winter rainfall. I've said that, and I know it's not quite right, but it's in a temperate. During summer, you've got there's a lot less pasture. Now, without the chlorophyll and the pasture, the milk and the fat content of the milk will reduce during summer, where in winter that gets a lot more. Now, when you're making, it's the solid parts of the milk that are the important part, and they're the things that actually bulk out the cheese and the cream and the yogurt. So for a dairy manufacturer to be able to better understand what they're getting through from 50 different farms, at what stage their milk is in fat and protein level, it helps them plan the most optimize how they use those components. Now, where we've seen this with pineapple manufacturers and even other cheese manufacturers, where they see this as being really important. Solving problems like this that are a really high value are important to us. And that's where we'll continue to push our R&D efforts to make sure that we can solve any supply chain issue. Excuse me. So again, that goes back to what I was saying, where I don't see that we couldn't we couldn't. That's why I'm sort of saying there's not a manufacturing segment that I'd suggest we couldn't model. Where and again, this might be helpful where a production environment is complex, and when competitive pressure is ensuring that they're starting to hold stock rather than make to order. And that will then start to challenge lead times and the rest. They're prime targets. Where people make to order like in the car industry.
Yeah.
Car industry, let's say a car manufacturer, it's fairly simple in the sense that, let's say they manufacture 2,000 cars a day.
Yep.
So they know that they need 2,000 widgets from you. And they're going to say, we want you delivering 2,000 each day. Effectively, what they've done is push their supply chain problem down onto you. I don't know what else you supply other than that widget to a car manufacturer. But in that sense, just in time works when there isn't complexity in the supply chain. As soon as there's complexity, and this is where okay, automotive manufacturer, the OEM, they may be okay, but their component manufacturers, while they might have stable supply to the car plant, there might be a lot of different other markets that they're servicing, which don't have the same discipline and relevant lead times. So it's that complexity where there is real value in supply chain. I think so. That's probably a better way to focus. Identifying your targets is not based on industry, but in complexity.
Complexity, yeah. And I also realized that your client like 120 million turnover, VAT. So I'm just wondering, what is like the minimum size or revenue or capacity of the company that we should target? Because we do not want to approach, smaller companies that will not bring any much worth it. That's not worth it for us to go into.
Yeah. Look, generally, what we've found, we've got clients that generally it's probably 20 million, a factory size of 20 million. Again, we may only get a $50,000 engagement at that size, but we still do those. I don't know how that sits with what sort of deals you want to be doing through Elsa.
Do you mean you charge minimum $50,000?
Yeah, that's generally the smallest project we get involved in.
Okay. So your pricing, the pricing is based on how many modules you sell, how many users. How do you price? How do you decide the price?
Well, look, with the qualification that I've just done, that is one site, one module.
Okay.
And look, just to talk about the flexibility of the software, it was a small cheese processor down in Melbourne that we did a job for about that much. I think they might have, to be honest, I think they could have been more like 15 million turnover, or even a bit less. But the point was, we put in our MPS tool, so that's inventory optimization, and what that allowed, what these guys do is they get supplied a lot of cheese from people like Fonterra or Bega, and they will shred or slice or grate and put it into 500-gram packs or for retail sale. they had opportunities where they could spot buy cheese, because not every job that they had was contracted to a cheesemaker. They were doing a lot of no name brand or supermarket brand products.
Mm-hmm.
Now, seeing cheese is the major cost of their manufacture, getting reductions in their cheese cost is pretty important. By spot buying it, they were able to save some huge dollar per kilo costs. Again, where that was falling down was they weren't matching their demand to the cheese maturity. And they were running out of, one, warehouse space. Two, they were starting to have cheese go moldy and having to dump it. And again, where that waste was, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars per annum. So even for a small manufacturer, 50,000 was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That's why we really focus on the return on investment rather than the dollar, because yeah, it's the value we're generating.
Yeah. Tim was mentioning before that you guys maintain the track record of 100% ROI under 12 months by actually choosing your client, right? Did I got it wrong?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that question.
Tim was mentioning to me, if I'm not wrong, he said that you guys are able to maintain the track record of 100% ROI under 12 months by actually choosing your clients as well. So you do not do projects that are not going to give you ROI within 12 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, when we do the supply chain opportunity assessment,
yeah,
we really do give the guarantee of delivering under 12 months ROI. It was 12 months that you were talking about?
Yes, I mean, if, for example, after the discovery, you realize that there is not so many, you cannot achieve the ROI, so you don't do the project. Do you?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
But with regards to, it's been, it's not often that, I can't remember an instance where we haven't been able to find a return on investment under 12 months.
Okay.
It's not to say everybody who's gone down that path straight away, but and that, as we all know, unfortunately, sales environments are sales environments.
Yeah.
And there are from what we're finding, very much versus Asian markets, our CEOs and CFOs seem to be a lot more conservative, and somewhat, I could be as rude to say recalcitrant. So it's like if they've been in the job for 30 years and they don't like software, they're never going to buy it. They're never going to believe it.
Yep.
So yeah, you can't you can't do much about that.
All right.
You just wait till there's a new MD. Look, with regards to that, have you got any? And happy for this, ask this in a week's time. Have you? I hope that's given you a bit more of a feel how to sell generally.
Yes.
If there's an area we should focus on training next time, have you got any thoughts about that, or should we leave that for a week and then maybe ask that question?
Yeah, I mean, there's no concrete way forward in which we should focus. So if you ask me, which industry, which area that we should focus on, I do not know yet, because we are still going through the market, engaging different industries, and so far we still do not see any solid interest from any industry just yet. But my plan is that to use this presentation that you have shown us on dairies, on tobacco and all this industry, at least I can have, a better engagement with them, and see in the next 1 or 2 weeks, see if there's any solid interest from those that we have contacted, and then we can move from there. Is that okay with you?
Oh, absolutely. And if anybody wants to drop us an email with regards to conversations they've had with clients,
Yes.
more than happy for you to do that. The way I'd be approaching that is if I can think of, it may jump out at me that there are certain areas that may warrant more investigation. It's one of those things that you probably learn more through experience. All I'd hope with that is to help you guys qualify where there might be opportunities.
Yep. Yeah, I think because to know which area to focus on, we need to engage the client, as soon as possible. Really try to understand their challenges first, and then we come back to you and see, can you these are the trend of the things that people are having challenges in. So yeah, but not now. This is, for us, it's still an early stage. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent.
Also, like about the meeting about the team's plan to come over to Malaysia. So he was saying that he might be able to come on the last week of March and also the first week of the first week of April, right?
April.
April, yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm not quite sure if we are able to get enough clients for him to see during that week. So we might have to push a bit.
Okay. Should we be? Have you got a feel yet, or should we just touch base in a week's time?
Maybe we can do it later on, because currently, like for the past 2 weeks, we have been aggressively engaged the industry, but for now the interest is not there yet. We might have to change our strategy, depends, but there's still no solid, because by right from internal planning, by this week we should at least get a few interested solid client that we can have for sure a good client that we can bring you guys in, but currently we do not have it yet.
Yep.
So hopefully maybe give us another 1 or 2 weeks and see if we can do better.
Look, that's certainly, and look, we'll remain at your convenience on that, and if it does need to be pushed back a week or two, like I say, we'll work with you guys as best we can.
Yep. Thank you, Rob.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your time. I will make this available. I'll work with the guys as the best way to get it across to you. And whoever can make it today, they can review it. And at least what we've found is that it's pretty easy to scroll through the video and get to the bits that you want to review when if there's in a week's time you're thinking, what was being said there, But having that resource there, we hope it'd help help you guys to review when you need.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. I think what you have given us as of now is good enough for us to move forward. Once we have a bit more, once we know which area, which industry to really focus on, we will definitely get back to you, because we do not want you to spend time on things that are not yet not focused. So yes, thank you very much. So is there any training schedules? Any training schedules in the future?
Not at this stage, but look, I would suggest we have a think about it for a week, and then look to, like I say, I'll ask a question again as to whether anything pops up that you feel, and we might give you a few options as to what we feel may be right.
Yes. Yep.
So let's play it that way.
All right, Tom and Rob. All right, Rob. Thank you very much for today. Send our regards to Tim.
Thank you. Certainly will. Thank you for your time, and speak shortly.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.